7 years ago, I had a nagging question. Is this really all life has to offer? My life wasn't that bad back then. I actually had a loving relationship and I just started a new job, so everything seemed to go right. But something felt off and I couldn't put a finger on it. And it kind of felt limited and predictable as if it were scripted or something. That's when I realized that I actually didn't really choose this life. Maybe this sounds familiar to you. If it is, this video is for you. In this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to fall into the trap of a scripted life. I am also going to tell you about one major realization that changed everything for me. And with this one major realization, there come three things that you can actually implement in your life to finally live the life you want and choose the life you want. So, how exactly might your life be already over before it even began? Well, most people don't destroy their lives, they just maintain them. They follow routines, they follow reasonable paths, they follow what people around them consider normal. That's what I did. And if change happened, it usually came from the outside, not from intrinsic motivation. Those changes might be a breakup that forces reflection, a job change that makes you adapt, or a move that forces a reset. Very rarely does change happen because someone clearly decided, this is no longer the life I want. So life keeps moving, but not necessarily forward. Instead, you take paths that don't lead you to a specific goal in life. And one day you realize you've been living reactively, not intentionally. That's how life can continue without ever really beginning. At some point, you ask yourself how you got there. Your life feels incomplete, but you can't put a finger on it. That's a sign that you have fallen into one of the biggest traps in life, the confusion of external change with real progress. For me, it was a new job, the end of a long lasting relationship, and a move to another city that felt like progress. But if the underlying pattern stays the same, nothing actually changes. You're still reacting instead of deciding, still adjusting instead of directing. I know this because I lived it and also noticed it in my social surroundings. I assumed that once the circumstances improve, fulfillment will follow. But fulfillment doesn't come from external changes or better conditions. It comes from alignment, and alignment requires control. If you don't control your life, it is on autopilot. It feels safe, reduces friction, and keeps you accepted. When you go with the flow, you rarely disappoint anyone. And that's the problem. When you repeatedly let others influence your decisions more than your own values, something subtle happens. You lose a clear sense of what you want. Over time, life becomes something you tolerate rather than something you actively shape. Nothing is wrong, everything is just okay. And that's how people stay stuck for years, until they discover the uncomfortable truth. When I don't take control over my life, I end up living not for myself, but for someone else. And that life is shaped by expectations, unspoken agreements, and default paths. And because it works on the surface, you accept it. But internally, there's a quiet disconnect. You feel it when you're alone, when things slow down, when you ask yourself what you actually want and don't have a clear answer. That's not a motivation problem, that's a control problem. So here's the real question you need to ask yourself. Do you have real control over your life? Not theoretical control, practical control. Do you decide where you're going with your life? Or does someone else set the direction? Are your major life decisions driven by your own values or by avoiding conflict, disappointment, or uncertainty? If nothing changed for the next 5 or 10 years, would you be okay with that? If the answer is uncomfortable, that's useful information. So how can you actually stop being on autopilot and finally begin to live the life you want? For that, you need to interrupt the pattern and start being accountable for your decisions. Three things matter here. First, start taking calculated risks. By that I mean small risks that wouldn't have such a big negative impact on your life if they failed. If you want to quit your job, make sure that you have a nest egg or other income sources to cover your living costs. Don't rely on a partner, family, or friends to help you out when in need, because that would be another way of giving up control. By taking calculated risks, you learn to be accountable for yourself and your decisions. And with that come better decisions that actually bring you step by step closer to the life you want to live. Second, make one significant decision that moves you towards the life you want. You have to get a clear vision of what you want and pave the way for it by taking the first step. Even a small decision can be significant when it leads to more changes. If you're a person who usually listens to other people around you, like family and friends, your decision might be to listen more to yourself and trust your gut. People won't always like your decisions because they would decide differently. By sticking to it, you gain more and more control over your life. Third, change your mindset. With your current mindset, you can suddenly expect to get different results. It's not easy to make that shift. But if you're not open to it, there won't be any change at all. You might want to watch my next video about how you can change your mindset almost instantly. I'll link it in the description. If you've made it until now, you're probably very serious about to live your life on your terms. And if you do, remember the 3 things I mentioned before. When you have implemented them in your life, you'll feel how a switch is being flipped in your head. Suddenly, you'll see every decision from a completely different angle. You'll start valuing things differently and be more conscious about life itself. You'll notice so many subtle nuances in your social surroundings that help you to take a clear path towards your goals. And most importantly, you'll start seeing major changes in your life. So what will your first step be? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching.